Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Thompson, and thank you very much for coming along and joining us for this short briefing on the Encompass Fund. As I said, my name is Linda Thompson. I work for the Women's Support Project. I have a national role as a coordinator focusing around commercial sexual exploitation, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined for this briefing by Yvonne Wilson. Yvonne, would you like to tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course, Linda, thank you. My name is Yvonne Wilson and I'm the service team leader for CLICK, which is a pilot project that covers the whole of Scotland, working with women who sell or exchange sex online and also images as well.
That's great, Yvonne. Thank you very much. So for the briefing this afternoon, we'd like to run through the Encompass Fund that is operated via the services and the partner agencies involved in the Encompass network. Now, the Encompass Fund really came about due to COVID-19, and women who were involved in commercial sexual exploitation or involved in prostitution are different elements of the sex industry in Scotland, as we know, were really badly affected by COVID-19, and the Scottish Government identified them as a high-risk, non-shielding group and recognised the financial dire straits that many women were in. And through the Immediate Priorities Fund, they allocated a small pot of money to the Encompass network for the Encompass Fund. So Encompass is a network of frontline specialist services working across Scotland with those involved in or at risk of becoming involved in or who have exited from sexual exploitation. It's a small network, and CLICK with Yvonne here today is one of the partner organisations. We're going to tell you a little bit more about the fund itself, the Encompass Fund, what the criteria is, the process through which women can go through to apply for it, and look at some of the possibilities for support for women through it. And Yvonne is going to be an incredible resource for that, given that her and some of the CLICK staff in Lanarkshire have been able to support women to access the fund. So the Encompass Fund, as I said, it is crisis help, it is hardship fund, and it is financial help to women who have been involved in selling or exchanging sex in Scotland. So it is crisis funds to really support women who are facing destitution or real hardship as a result of COVID-19. The criteria for it, we try to have really quite simple criteria and to make it as accessible to as many women as possible. So to be eligible for the fund, women must be over 18, they must be resident in Scotland, they must have been involved in or at risk of becoming involved in commercial sexual exploitation, including transactional sex, prostitution, lap dancing, selling or exchanging sexual images online, involved in pornography. So we try to have made the fund as broad and as wide as possible for as many women. And as I said earlier, it is about financial crisis and hardship. So the women must be facing some element of crisis or hardship, primarily as a result of COVID-19. So how do women apply? And we'll talk through this in a wee bit with Yvonne, but we try to keep a very simple process, to be quite honest, and as light touch as we possibly can. Women can apply themselves directly by speaking to an Encompass Network service. So they can approach a service and say, I'd like to find out more about the fund and how do I apply for it? Or organisations and agencies that work with women can apply on their behalf. So they can link in with an Encompass Network service, complete a very simple application and submit it on behalf of the women, obviously with the women's consent. If you want to know where the local services are, it's available on the Encompass Network site in the directory section. There's an email there that you can contact a bit more information, but certainly for the Lanarkshire area, the prime service and the referring service really for the Encompass Fund would be CLICK. As I said earlier, it's a very simple process. An application form is completed and submitted. That is reviewed and assessed by staff. Then a decision is reached and that decision is communicated to the women. And if successful, then the arrangements are made how to meet that need, how the fund can basically meet it. And I'll talk through that in a wee minute with Yvonne. But basically, we try to get a decision as quickly as possible and to get some form of support out to women as quickly as possible following that. As I said earlier that women can apply directly. They don't need to be linked in with Encompass previously. In fact, they don't need to be linked in with any service. They can come straight through for the fund, and it is not a condition of the fund that they will continue to work with the Encompass network. However, a large number of women have wanted to continue accessing different forms of the service, or being advocated into, or kind of a bridge into other services. Agencies and organisations can apply on their behalf. So organisations that support women across the kind of sectors can apply and make that application to the Encompass Network service on their behalf. And it really is an incredibly simple form that's completed by the woman and a staff member working with her. Now, Yvonne, if I can maybe ask you, just in terms, we'll talk a little bit more about Click in a moment, but maybe if you could talk a bit about, I mean, what is that kind of application form like? How basic is it, and how much information is required for the women for the form?
Well, that's the thing, Linda. I think it's really important to emphasise the confidentiality of that form as well. You know, we only take basic information from the woman, and that just is like account details, you know, address, and the name that she wishes to be known by. And it's important to kind of stress that that information doesn't go anywhere else. It stays within our organisation for a short period of time, to which it's then destroyed. So the information that goes out to anybody else is simply just initials and really an idea of what women needed the funds for, and that's obviously to feed that information back in relation to the crisis that women in Scotland are experiencing. So the form itself is very basic. There's also the counselling element as well that can actually come along with that, and it's just like basically the information of the crisis the woman is experiencing, which can be the fact that she's no electricity, she hasn't got any food, and a very, very brief overview of you know, whether she's on benefits, whether she's working, not working, etc. And it's as simple as that. That's it, really. We don't need any other information from her.
And I think that's really reassuring, Yvonne, that it is an incredibly simple process. And as you say, it's that real emphasis, isn't it, that the women's information and their details will not be shared with anybody else without their consent. And I think that is a huge concern for women, isn't it? That who else will find out? Who else will find out if I've applied to the fund, but also who else will then find out that I've been potentially involved in prostitution. So I think what we're hearing from yourself, Yvonne, is that, you know, there's a really robust system in place to ensure that the women's information is kept confidential, and the fact that she's made an application is not going to be shared with anybody else without her consent.
Yep, correct. That's right. And I think that's something, you know, that the workers strive really, you know, every day when they're speaking to women, you know, they make a point in saying this is completely confidential.
And that's a really huge issue for women. So it's good that, you know, the staff are obviously fully in tune with that and are able to put that across really quite strongly to women. And I think, you know, if there's organisations that are considering putting an application through, it's that emphasis to, and that reassurance that they need to be putting to women, that just because they've came through them potentially and being supported to access the fund, it doesn't necessarily mean that their information is going to be shared far and wide beyond who needs to know, really. That's great, Yvonne. Thanks very much. So women can, as you said, can apply directly, as you've heard from Yvonne, just that really quite simple and basic application form. We don't want to make it too complicated because we understand the needs that women can be experiencing. So what can the fund be used for? I mean, it is that basic, and as Yvonne, you said, it depends very much on that woman's individual need, doesn't it? That it could be something like food or living essentials, clothes, bedding, utilities like heating and light. And there can be other exceptions with discretion. So that's very much, isn't it, that it's based on an individual woman's needs. Is there anything else, Yvonne, that, given that you have supported a number of women and workers around these applications to the fund, is there anything else that's kind of missing off that very simple list that you can think of that women have applied for and have been successful in getting support from the fund to meet that need?
Yeah, I think it's really important to stress it's a case-by-case basis, and that we will consider every single application on its own, you know, merit, because at the end of the day, we've had women in various difficult and sometimes challenging circumstances. In one particular case, we assisted a woman with travel, so that she could actually get to another part of the country, because otherwise she was going to be completely isolated and wasn't going to be given the opportunity to, you know, to have the support that she required at that time. She had huge changes in her life, so it was important to be round about her family and her friends, that kind of support network.
Yeah, yeah,
Other things we've considered is pet food for people who have also had pets,
yeah.
so there's various different needs that have came across, children's clothing, like you've already got there. So it's not always necessarily for the actual woman herself, but it's anything, immediate needs. We've had domestic abuse, applications in for women who are fleeing domestic abuse. So we've assisted maybe perhaps in the travel of that, or, additional clothes for the children to travel, to get to wherever they're going for, like, the safety kind of side of it, etc. So there's numerous different situations that we've considered, and and we're open to to talk about women's individual needs. So we're not going to say things are excluded. We will consider all situations for women.
And I think that's really important, Yvonne, isn't it? It's taking that kind of sense that whilst the women are going through a pandemic and there's a number of needs, it's that holistic approach that you are trying to deliver via the fund as well. It's recognizing that women will all have individual circumstances and they will have individual needs, individual contexts, but it's working with the woman to see what we can do, as opposed to working to find ways not to get her access to the funds. And I think that's really important, isn't it? It's very much that proactive with the staff about how we can ensure women's needs are met. Yvonne, can I also ask you, I know that the fund has been used for these level of need and situations for women, but have you been able to access and support women to access any other funds that they would be entitled to as well?
Yeah, that's part of them. Most of the time, women will say they just want to actually apply for this short, a small portion of this fund, and they don't wish to kind of maybe work with a worker again, which is again absolutely fine. However, there has been times where there's been continued support, and it's looked at much bigger, long-term cases, if you like, where a short amount of money or a small amount of money from us over a short period of time is not really going to support that woman fully, in the next coming months. So what we've done is we've looked at the victim fund, we've looked at the welfare fund, we've accessed, looked at other grants, we've looked at other possibilities of getting, some kind of financial assistance as well. So we don't just say, well, you've got this Encompass fund, you can get this however X amount of money, but we also look at other other funds, other financial availability, whether it's actually supporting women to apply for benefits as well, which we've had a number of women come to our service, and it's really just been for the Encompass Fund, but we've actually ended up continuing to support them with like universal credit applications, etc. So there's been lots and lots of support work undertaken with all the workers across the kind of Scotland, and it's been looking at various options for financial assistance, not just from the Encompass network.
And I think it's great, Yvonne, that staff that would also be based in the Lanarkshire area would have that knowledge and experience about supporting women to access other funds, like you mentioned, the Victim Fund, which potentially can offer an awful lot more than the Encompass Fund can, as well as you said, looking at things like, the Abalore Fund, the Welfare Fund, also support with utilities. So the Encompass Fund, I suppose, in some ways, is just one part of a package that the workers are aware of other funding that may be available for women. So that's really great to know that, staff are able to tap women into this, but they're also able to support women potentially access other funds that they may be eligible for.
Absolutely. I think it is, really essential for staff to know what's out there to support women.
Brilliant. And I know that we're talking about, Yvonne, about the fund. There's an upper cap on the fund, and with the new round of funding available, there will be an upper amount, probably around £150 per application for women. But that there's an element of discretion with it. So the fund can, I suppose, in some ways support quite a range of needs for the women. And I just wanted to pick up, you mentioned earlier counselling that's available via the fund, Yvonne. Would you mind telling us a wee bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have access to counsellors as well within the Click service. And if women come to us, stating that they're experiencing some difficulties at the moment with their situation and they wish to kind of talk it through. Sometimes they can do that at a sort of, a one-to-one level with the CLIC workers. However, if there's anybody experiencing trauma, or if there's anything obviously that they wish to speak to an experienced counsellor, then we have access. We can take a referral for that as well. And we can provide, I think it's up to like 6 sessions with women. If that's, sometimes it may be a shorter period of time, just maybe a few conversations with an experienced trained counsellor, then that option is there for women as well.
That's brilliant, Yvonne. So that counselling that's available, as you said, up to 6 sessions, that trauma-informed counselling, that's also available via the Encompass Fund. So that's another resource available for women via the fund, and it can be accessed via CLIC. But that's a really important resource, I guess, at the moment for some women who are experiencing quite a high level of need, but that unfortunately mainstream services just may not be in a position to pick that up at the moment. So I think that's brilliant that the fund is also able to support women with that element of support. Now, I put a slide up here. How can workers, organisations or services around Lanarkshire find out what the local agency is? Well, the Encompass agencies are all listed here on this particular website, encompassnetwork.info. And there's an email address down at the bottom there, encompass@womensupportproject.org.uk. So if anybody would like to find out more information about the Encompass services overall, that is where they can find them. But if we're talking about Lanarkshire here, then yourselves and CLIC, Yvonne, would be the local based service. So would you mind telling us a wee bit more about CLIC itself and what basically it can offer on a local level?
Yeah, sure, Linda. We are an inclusive and confidential service, obviously offering safety and wellbeing advice and support to women across Scotland. Specifically in Lanarkshire, we have a worker, Annabelle, who's available in Scotland. And I suppose one of the things that I'd like to kind of stress is, how do we do that? How do we deliver this service? And obviously, because we have our online website, etc., it's easy for people to just get in touch with us in relation to, like, we do an online chat, which is available on a Monday and a Tuesday. But if you access the website, it gives you all the details of the times and days available. But there is an option to leave your name. And I want to stress this as well, if I can, is that people will often come on and leave a referral. They will say, I wish to get support from CLIC, these are my circumstances. However, sometimes what they don't do is they don't leave contact or forwarding information for us to be able to make contact with them. And I want to stress that in order to kind of complete that referral form, it is completely anonymous. So, and we are transparent about that, the fact that we don't have a way of linking back where that referral form came from. So we absolutely need to have a contact number or an email address, or however women wish to be contacted. We will follow it up if we have their contact details. And obviously we have referrals from other agencies as well, where peer agencies get in touch with us to say that they've got a woman who's in need or who is involved in commercial sexual exploitation, and ask for some consultancy, and sometimes that generates a referral to our service as well. So that's kind of what we do. And obviously the Encompass Fund has been a huge part of our work over the last few months. Given the pandemic, women have found themselves in extreme financial crisis, sometimes destitute, to be honest, and no access to benefits or whatever. And on the other hand, actually sometimes continuing to work, putting themselves not only obviously, and legal difficulties, if you like, in terms of the restrictions to travel and all the rest of it, but also a safety risk, a health and safety risk, putting themselves to work out, when in the middle of a pandemic. So we've been quite busy with referrals in the last so many months.
And I think it's interesting, Yvonne, you said there about, women were almost forced into, or for many women, they were in a position where they had to continue to be involved in prostitution or elements of the sex industry during COVID, just simply because they did not have any alternative or any choice, which really flags up the level of financial need that many women can have at this moment in time, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the worry is obviously a lot of women won't have heard of our service either. We might have a lot of social media around it, we might have tried to kind of put radio adverts out, etc. But, sometimes it just doesn't quite reach everyone. So it's good that, you know, that we rely on our peer agencies, our colleagues, to basically share our information far and wide in order that it does get to women who maybe don't know about our service, you know. So that's why this recording today, Linda, is really, really vital and important, is that we reach women in Lanarkshire who maybe don't know about our service, you know, and there's a worker there who would be able to support them during this pandemic.
And I think it's that real call to action, isn't it, Yvonne, about how important it is that all our services are really well connected and really well informed about each other and what we're currently able to offer, because at the heart of it, there's women who are in really quite difficult circumstances. And if workers don't know what all is available in their area, then it's really difficult for women then to know. So whilst, you know, we, in many ways, women need local based staff across a whole range of agencies to be aware of CLIC and to be aware of the Encompass Fund, because, you know, whilst women may not readily disclose that they're involved in selling or exchanging sex, we know there's increasing numbers of women who are in a position to do it. So that kind of partnership and that network and that connectedness is always important, but it just strikes me that it's even more important at this moment in time. And I think it's really good as well, Yvonne, as you said, that, you know, the Encompass Fund is only one very small part, a tiny part in reality, of that much more comprehensive, holistic service that CLIC is able to offer to women across Scotland, but in particular around the Lanarkshire area. And it, as you said, the worker's name there is Annabelle.
Yeah.
So Annabelle is a local CLIC worker in Lanarkshire. And so there's some details put up here, Yvonne, about how, if anybody is interested in connecting with Yvonne to find out more about CLIC, more about the work, but also more about the Encompass Fund. This is the best way for staff and agencies to get in contact with Annabelle via that email address or that mobile number there.
Yep, absolutely. But I would like to stress as well, even just through the website, you know, workers can be contacted on the online chat. The referral form can be completed. So although Annabelle's a Lanarkshire worker, we have workers all over Scotland who can pick up any piece of work, you know, and carry it forward and maybe pass to Annabelle at another time or whatever. So it's more important, obviously, that we you know, we just go through the website and fill the referral form in, really, so that we can allocate, you know, the case as quickly as possible.
Sure. So what I'm hearing here, Yvonne, is that if anybody would like to make a referral through, not just for the fund, but also much broader than that for support, the best route is to go to www.click.scot. And there's a referral form available on the website. They complete that, and then CLIC would get in touch about who would be picking up on that work and continuing that work with that woman. Is that what I've understood correctly?
That's correct, Linda.
Brilliant. So I think, you know, the fund is available. It is available for a short period of time. There is discussions with the Scottish Government about kind of ongoing financial support for this high-risk, non-shielded group of women. And as I suppose we are all acutely aware, is that the pandemic and the impact of the pandemic is far from over. And I think women are going to continue to be in incredibly vulnerable situations in many ways, not just themselves, but their children. But this fund is available. And as Yvonne mentioned earlier, you know, the workers are well tapped in and well knowledgeable about other funds that are available. So I think, you know, it is about women are entitled to the money, and it's about ensuring that organizations know about it, but also that women know about it. And I think, you know, as you mentioned earlier, Yvonne, for many women, I mean, the Encompass Fund has supported over 200 women over the course of the pandemic. So, I mean, the money is there and available, and we would really, really, really be encouraging women and workers who work with them to look at putting forward an application if the women are involved in any element of sexual exploitation. But we know for many women it has been a lifeline during this particularly difficult time. And, you know, as one of the women who accessed the fund said, I don't know what I'd have done without it. It was the light at the end of the tunnel for the kids and me. It was simple and easy to apply for, and the staff were so helpful. Thank you. And I think that's the kind of message that we want to put out, is that women are entitled to this money. The money is there and it's available for them. They can come forward and just make an application for the fund without an expectation that they're going to continue with services. but also that there is a range of other services that are available via Encompass, but particularly for Lanarkshire via Click. So I think that's a really heartening message that we want to be putting out to women. I mean, Yvonne, is there anything else you would like to say just before we wind up this briefing?
I don't think so, Linda, but I do think, you know, just to go back again to the point of the confidentiality, that can't be stressed enough, because we do have some women that have contacted us and have actually basically said, you know, they don't wish to proceed with the application unless they can be assured that their details are not going to be shared. And I think it's just important, again, to mention at the end of this recording that, you know, their details are completely confidential. We do not share them whatsoever.
And I think that's a really important point to end on, isn't it, Yvonne, that
Yeah,
the services via Encompass and via Click in Lanarkshire, that they are free and they are confidential, but that the service is well tapped in with other local services if the women need referred into or advocated for
yeah,
that kind of support from other people as well. That's
absolutely.
brilliant, Yvonne. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And really, I suppose what we're trying to say to workers across Lanarkshire is get in touch and find
Yeah,
out more, not just about the Encompass Fund, but also all of the elements of the support that's available via Click in the local area.
yeah, that would be great, Linda. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much. And this has been a brief run through of what the fund is, but please, we would encourage you to contact either Click in the local area or Encompass, and we can certainly provide more information and support to ensure that women are able to access the fund. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care now and goodbye.